Welcome to the Finding the Magic podcast, where books come alive. I'm Tricia Copeland, a fiction author and host of this show. If you love books, finding great reads, and hearing about the story behind the story directly from the authors, this is the place for you. Whether you like fantasy, science fiction, dystopian, or romance titles, I think you'll find something to love in my playlist. Listen in to discover something magical about a book or two today. Welcome, Ben.
Hey, Tricia, thanks for having me on.
Well, thanks for being here. Today we have Ben Schenkman. He is an urban fantasy author. Is the series complete yet?
Is any series ever complete? It's currently at 3 books,
Okay.
and I've actually just started writing the fourth in the series. The way that I write series is each one. I don't like cliffhangers. Like I don't like trilogies where the first book is the setup, the middle book is, and then you don't get the actual end until the third book. It's like I can't do that anymore. Like I used to read those kinds of books, but I'm not sure at what point that changed. So all of my books have their own complete arc and they wrap up. They give a teaser of like what's potentially next. And then that way, if I don't write another book, you won't be too sad. But if I do write a book, it goes from there. So 3 published books with one in process, and I'm not sure whether there are going to be more than 4.
Okay. Right. So the name of the series is The Devil You Know, and the first book is My Boss, the Devil.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the covers. Why don't you show us? Yeah, The Devil You Know. My Boss, the Devil. And My Boss.
Yeah.
Which everybody has probably thought that at one point in some job that they had.
Yeah, and funny enough, I've had a few like real world bosses that after I published, they kind of were like that's not about me, is it? And
Right.
I had to remind them that this is actually a work of fiction, not inspired by any one particular person, you know?
You have those disclaimers in the front page, right?
Yeah.
Well, fun. What got you into writing these?
Well, it's funny. I kind of joke. So Nick, the main character, is a little bit of he's a little bit of an everyman in that we're all Nick. We've all had a dead end job at one point in our lives that we desperately wanted to get out of and maybe didn't know quite how to do that. And I was working what I felt like it was a dead end job, and I had a fair amount of time on my hands in between like my activities. Like I was good at my job, I was doing my thing, but I had some downtime and I started writing up this idea because I said, I don't really like this job, but what would happen if the devil came along and offered me another one? What would I do? And then that like seed of an idea turned into this book. It was actually a really long time in coming. Um, from when I started writing until when I finished the first draft, there was a very long break. But then I finished the first draft of it during NaNoWriMo 2014. And then it basically sat on a shelf for like 9 years until I dusted it off again and then decided to self-publish. So yeah, it started when I was working kind of a dead end job, and then it just turned into a series.
Fun. Yeah, I had a job where I had jury duty. And I realized during my jury duty that I would rather be on the jury duty than in my job. And I said, that may be a sign.
Just a little sign.
So tell me about Nick. Is he himself supernatural, or he just ends up having a boss who's supernatural?
Yeah, so Nick has no inherent like supernatural ability. He is just a regular guy. He's a barista. And he's a barista because he could not figure out any other way to like have a job that was at least paying the bills. It's funny actually. I have a newsletter, and if you sign up on my website, you can get it's a short story like prequel to My Boss is the Devil. It's called The Thief of Joy that actually goes into how Nick became a barista and got into the devil's crosshairs in the first place. But yeah, no, Nick is not inherently supernatural, and it's funny. I'll actually describe my books as a little bit like, you know how there's like high magic and low magic in epic fantasy. Like high magic is like magic is everywhere and it's common, and but like low magic is people are generally just people, and like only special people have magic and powers. It's kind of low magic urban fantasy in that the devil as like an organization can make supernatural things happen and is supernatural, and then Nick joining, the company pushes him in that direction. But even then it's more like supernatural contract law than it is like it's not magic per se. Though in the later in the series, so there's a supporting character in the first book named Amy. So like magic is real. So it isn't that there isn't magic and there's just the devil and the supernatural. There's also just magic like witchcraft, but even that is still like much less common. So starting in book two and then much more heavily in book three, a lot of the witchy elements come in because Amy goes from being a supporting character in the first book to effectively like a secondary main in the second, and then has equal screen time in the third book.
Oh, fun. So in each book, do they face different challenges? That's sort of how the series is set up, and they have something different they have to overcome. And so you can wrap that challenge up, and then the next book is going to be their next challenge.
Exactly. It's a little bit like Monster of the Week. Like if you think about the way that a lot of like TV shows do it, is that each episode, while advancing the larger plot, has a sub like a plot that wraps itself up within the episode. It is episodic in that way. And actually, it's funny because I love these covers so much, but the covers actually kind of tell the story. So in the first book, we've got Nick and we've got the devil, right? But then in the second book, which is Dueling Shoulder Angels, we have Nick and Amy. And we don't just have the devil, this book introduces God. So we start seeing what the other side looks like. And then in the third book, which is Too Many Gods in the Kitchen, we've got Nick, Amy, and another character that I can't name because it's absolutely a spoiler for the first two. But then this is also where we start going outside of the Abrahamic religions. So not just God and the devil, but I mean the silhouette gives it away. We at least add a Hindu deity to our roster as well as one more. So yeah, each book has a new challenge that Nick or the team faces, and each of them has different pieces of it too. Because I don't like having, at least in this series, I want each character to have something that they bring that is basically kind of unique for them, but then also still wraps itself into the larger storyline.
Yeah, I just wrote an article on different types of series and the way some authors like either do the episodic thing like the supernatural TV show, or do like a continuing arc series, or like the romance series a lot of times that will do like different characters in a town or something like that. So you wrap up in one book, but then you have, related characters. So yeah, I just did an article on that. I can't remember which magazine I submitted it to, but it was really fun to see like how many different types of series. And yeah, every person, like my husband would not read like Lord of the Rings now. When he was younger, he would, but now he's like, no. And he's not even gonna read my books because my books are sort of like that. He's like, no, I'm not doing it, it's too long. Give me 20 minutes, I'm good. So yeah, I think there's a reader for every type of book and series.
Yep, totally agree.
So you're so obviously the devil, I'm assuming he's evil-ish at least, or evil adjacent.
Is,
Or
is he though? That's the thing. So the intention was never to make the devil necessarily the bad guy. Um, you will definitely have questions as you go through the first book of whether the devil really is the problem or is it something else. Um, my books tend to focus on more the evil of men than the supernatural. It doesn't mean that the supernatural can't be evil or can't be a threat, but I tend to focus on some of the deeper topics, and that's kind of the irony because my books are dark comedy. It's urban fantasy, it's dark comedy, but I do hit some heavy topics. What is good? What is evil? Is all of this really what we think it is? Do the ends justify the means? What is it? What's it worth to me to protect the people that I love? And so I tend to have at least a bit of a theme for each of the books with like a big question. So the devil might be the bad guy, but we'll have to read the first book and find out. It's definitely leaves people questioning it throughout.
okay, yeah, I think fantasy books are a great way to explore all of those themes and topics and help us to think about those. I have, I mean, I write YA fantasy, but in the finale, it's not giving too much away, but they're battling this evil spirit, and sort of there's this prophesied fairy that is supposed to end all evil, and really that's what she comes up against. Like, well, how do you end all evil? Because there's a little bit, I mean, I've never been 100%, completely nice. Obviously, you slip up, you tell a lie, you hurt somebody's feelings, you are selfish. I mean, all of that's a human trait, right? So, and obviously there's lesser or greater. Who can say what's lesser or greater? But that sounds, yeah, it sounds like a really good series to dive into.
Thank you.
Are
Yeah,
you
and
go ahead, keep going.
oh, sorry, no, I just wanted to let you know also the first book I also have I've released an audiobook for the first book in I've released that at the end of October, and I narrate it and produce it myself. And it's gotten really good reviews so far. So, if you like audiobooks, that's another way to do it. I'm actually producing the second one right now.
Fine. I think you read my mind, because I was just thinking I'm an audiobook listener because I'm doing chores or driving in my car. That's the best way for me to consume books. So I love that. So you're
I,
writing the fourth book.
mhm.
What does that look like? Are we getting more gods, angels, demons? Where are we headed with this?
Yeah, I mean it's really not much of a spoiler because it's a concept that's unrelated mostly to the first three books. But this one actually yes, we're going to introduce other gods into the mix, but the focus of the fourth book is actually death. So we've got the devil, we've got God, we've got other pantheons, and now we have a bigger, concept, which is death and the angel of death and all that.
Ooh, interesting. So do you have a reaper in the story at all? Do you introduce that type of character?
Not exactly. And I do that kind of intentionally. So the way that my mythos is set up is and for the record, I rarely do standard representations. It's like a lot of people comment on the way that the devil and God is set up, that it's very corporate. Also, for the record, I wrote the draft of this book before the Lucifer TV series ever existed. So, like,
Actually, I was gonna make reference to that, but I was like, oh, that's a little cliche, so I won't.
So yeah, I just put in that out there in that there was no inspiration from the TV show because I wrote it first. I obviously I'm not the first person to write a book about the devil. A lot of really classic representations that I adore, but most of them are really bombastic, ostentatious devils. Like, it was never intended to be like the cigar smoking, like, hey kid, I'll make you a deal
Jack
kind of
Nicholas
thing. Yeah,
inspired.
exactly. Or like what is it, Al Pacino in
The Godfather, right? Or
no
that's
no
the one.
no the what is it? It's Devil's Advocate, I think,
Oh, okay.
with Keanu Reeves.
Right. Okay. Right.
Um, but yeah, so so I don't plan to have a Reaper character. Also, ironically, another indie author friend of mine, Andrew Givler, he has a series out called Soul Fraud, and the funny thing is, our books actually they don't track along with each other in that like they're too similar, but like we end up exploring a lot of the same concepts. His has a lot more to do with like the soul, and it goes in a much more traditional urban fantasy, like guns blazing, swords and stuff. And mine is very much not that. Mine focus more on character-driven plots without a lot of action. At least this series does. I actually have two other books, and I could talk about that later. But so yeah, no Reapers like his, and this is also funny because now we joke that like fourth books have to be about death because like his fourth book in this series has to do with death, and I was like, no, but mine's different at least. Like yes, death, but like different death. So yeah, no Grim Reapers.
Yeah, I am a big proponent for, and I lost someone a couple of years ago. So, and I was talking to someone else who also lost someone, and we were both saying that, death, it would be good if death was more normalized in our society, if it was easier to talk about it with people instead of like the awkward conversation when you see somebody in the grocery store and the person doesn't know what to say. And just can we have it as more of, I don't know even know how to cross that boundary. But anyway, so I but and that's kind of scary because my fourth book has a major death in it too. So I'm not sure what that has to do with, but
That's
it was
it for
that
book
time in
book
my life.
four. Book four is always death, apparently. Yeah, and I'm sorry for that, and I totally get that. We in especially the United States, we don't have a good like I was going to say death culture, but that's not really what I mean. Like
Yeah, kind of.
we're not taught how to deal with death, dying, and bereavement. So it's all just kind of taboo. And it's interesting. So I'm Jewish. So another like in the I take on these Abrahamic things in a kind of a sideways way because I've never been Christian, and yet like that this is the slant that these books have. Uh, but I have another manuscript that I'm currently I'm submitting to publishers through an agent, and it's written from a Jewish perspective. It's urban fantasy, but it's focused around a potential murder. And it actually talks a lot about the fact that some cultures and some religions even act like death is contagious. And the reason why we don't talk about it is because we're afraid of it and we're worried that it's going to come for us next, you know? So yeah, it's interesting topics to talk about in fantasy novels.
Right, yes. And it's funny because I'm Christian, but many of my fantasy themes and the way that my vampires and witches come about are based on angels and devils and demons and spirits and things like that. And a lot of, and I said to somebody in the podcast yesterday, I was like, well, somebody that's Christian might be offended. And they said, well, why are you saying Christian? And I was like, oh, I guess that's because that's how I was seeing it. But he was like, many of these Bibles of, the Jewish Bible and many of the other religions' Bibles start out very much the same way with there's a creator, and then it just kind of got well, in my belief, it's probably we're all in one mismatch, but that's me. So we're all in together.
We are, and a lot of world religions actually, there are a lot of similarities, and it's funny that we're touching on this because I feel like this is a niche that I've made for myself. Like I mentioned that I have two other manuscripts that I'm currently like figuring out what to do with. Again, either I can get them published traditionally or I'm going to self-publish them because it. One thing I firmly believe is that when you write books, they should see the light of day. And if you can't find a publisher for them, then if you feel like you had a story to tell, then people will want to read it. So yeah, my first series is entirely self-published. So the next two might end up that way, but either way, all of them. So these are like two books that are now standalones or series starters by themselves. Each of them touches on different religions. So like we've got a lot of the Abrahamic stuff in the first series. The next one touches on a combination of some like modern occultism, but also a lot of indigenous myth and folklore. And then the third one focuses on Jewish mysticism, which, for the record, like you said, the Jewish Bible. I mean, like the the Old Testament is the
It's the
Torah,
same, right?
um,
Yeah.
and oh my God, in there are other books like the Talmud. There is so much demonology in Judaism. It's ridiculous. And like I am Jewish and I didn't even know all of this until I started doing the research on it. But there's a lot of like common stuff, like you said, like most religions have concepts of some kind of higher beings. Like even if they're pantheistic, they may still have like angelic figures, whether it's Christianity or not. So yeah, we're all in this together.
From a very early age, I thought, something is wrong with a God that would send someone to hell, and just because they didn't believe the same thing. So yeah, I very quickly got a different view on that. So how did you decide to start writing at all?
I used to so I wrote from a young age. Like I was in elementary school writing like little storybooks, and then in middle school I wrote some short story fiction, and I actually won a writing contest apparently. Like I recall it happening, but I couldn't tell you what it was about. And then I wrote a lot of poetry in high school and college because I was goth and angsty and yeah, I've written something off and on like the majority of my life. There's just been long breaks in between. And now that I've gotten back into it, it's really something that I've loved doing, you know. Like not counting the first one because technically the majority of it was drafted in 2014. But like as I was publishing the first book in 2023, I wrote the second book in like a month and a half.
Wow.
I wrote the third book in the 2 months, 2 to 3 months after that. And then I wrote my next two books in succession, like over the next maybe 3 to 4 months apiece. So like in the last, you know, 2 year, not even 2 years, last year and a half at the most, I've written four books. Two of which are published, two of which I'm in the process, but like I've just really loved doing it.
Yeah, I feel like once you get in that creative zone and you have all these ideas in your head, they just keep coming. No, at least for me, it doesn't seem to be a way to turn them off.
Yeah, I have a whole like Google Doc of ideas for other books and other series that like if I, get stuck on one thing, I can always pick up another idea and I'm always coming up with more ideas and I add to like it's going to take me a decade to write even a portion of the things that I have on my ideas list.
So no worries about you getting that second barista job or anything like that.
And it's funny, I spend a lot of time at coffee shops. My partner and I, Kat, we do what we call coffee shop time, meaning we go to a coffee shop, we order some drinks and snacks, and then we sit and like I write and they knit or draw, or because they're an artist also, they actually the chapter art in the first three books, Kat did the chapter art for those. It's cute little like pencil drawings.
Oh, fun.
But yeah, I spend a lot of time at coffee shops, and like it's not that I want to work at one, but at the same time, like so my brother in high school was a barista working at a local coffee shop, and I think like I stole some of that when I wrote the first book, but I also know a lot about coffee. But I haven't actually worked as a barista, so part of me is like, and then I'm like, no, wait, Ben, you have a full-time job, and like this is not a good idea.
Yeah. Plus, you want to write. Plus, you want to record your audiobook. Plus, oh, there might be the house to clean at some point.
Yeah. Yeah, and the audiobooks, like no joke, it is more work to record and produce an audiobook than it is to write it, like just in hours, I think.
I can imagine. Yes, I what. So somebody sent me to this organization that records books for the blind, and so I arranged to take my books down there. Like they wanted physical copies of the books, and because I had a lot of volunteers, and they said, well, if you want to try recording your book, we can put you in the studio because a lot of authors want to record their own books. Um, and so he put me in the studio, and it was horrible. Like I was reading too fast. I was so nervous, and it was a romance book too. So, and it was like a guy, and I was just so nervous. And so he said, "Well, we'll contact you if we want you to read our books." I never heard from him again. So, yeah,
Look, we have to know our limitations.
yes,
So
definitely.
I have a background in theater. Like I've been doing theater and also like role playing and other things all of my life. So like on top of I can also do a bunch of different accents and whatnot. So it makes sense for me to record my audiobook. I also my mom can't really read my books right now. She's had some difficulties, and so I actually, because I had put my first book, I put it out for audition on ACX, the Audible exchange, and I got auditions back. And so like it's a multifaceted decision. You know, indie authors, you have to decide what can you invest in money versus what can you invest in time. Now, having time does not make up for needing to be able to do the thing. So like expecting someone who cannot record audiobooks to record an audiobook would not be good. Like it can be a death knell for an author to do their own book if they don't do a good job. But I also had a very sentimental reason for doing it, which is I wanted my mom to be able to hear my books like in my voice. So in the end, I took the book off the exchange and put it up as a self-produced project, and it went from there.
That's great. Yeah, that's really neat. And I will definitely download your audiobook because I'm completely captivated with the series already. So put that on my next on my list. Well, tell us where we can find you and your books and your whole world.
Yeah, so you can find me on my website. It is benschenkman.com. That's one place to find me. It's also where you can find a link to all of my socials. Um, I am on all of the social media platforms except for the platform formerly known as Twitter. I'm not on there at all. So you can find me on Facebook and Blue Sky and Instagram, but all of that is linked from my website. My books, the ebooks are exclusive to Amazon through their because they're also available through Kindle Unlimited. So for subscribers of that, all of my books are on Kindle Unlimited, so that's great for you. But for formats, they are available in paperback and hardcover, and that those you can get wherever you like. It's not just on Amazon, but also other retailers. And then the audiobook for the first book is now more widely available. It was exclusive to Audible, but uh, I just changed from an exclusive contract so I could put it out more widely. So it's on Spotify, Libra FM, Hoopla, all those.
Oh, that's great. Well, thank you so much for being here, Ben. Ben Schenkman, SCHENKMAN, if you want to.com, if you want to go to his website. And I think you said you had a free short story for newsletter subscribers too, right?
Yeah, and I am not intrusive. I'll send at most one newsletter a month with usually some information about like book deals and sales and other things. But if you sign up, you get a free short story, which is how Nick became a barista.
Fun. Well, thank you so much for being here, and I hope you'll come back when you release your next book.
Yeah, thanks, Trisha. Anytime.
Thanks, Ben. Bye. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Finding the Magic podcast. I'm your host, author and podcaster Trisha Copeland, and I love getting behind the scenes. If you like the podcast, make sure to subscribe and stop in each week to discover new authors and books. Thanks for listening, and until next time, keep finding the magic.